People of Reddit, what's the worst thing that's happened on your job? Serious. It's not as dramatic. But we were interviewing for a position once and the candidate's husband called to say she'd been killed in an accident on her way to the interview. He actually apologized. It was awful. Air traffic control. Didn't happen to me. But I was working that day and heard the replay. Couple takes off in bad weather and get more ice on their wings than they can handle. They dropped like a rock and screamed on frequency the whole way down. The worst part is the other planes may or may not have heard it and you have to keep talking to other planes like nothing happened until someone relieves you. I was a controller in the military. Worst I had was working in radar and had a Cessna coming in on final, not me doing final. Everything was normal and then silence. They went below safe limits and were called off. Never heard anything. Got a call from tower about an explosion at the mountain near approach. It was our plane. We lost 4 service members from COL. Down to an E3 in an accident that shouldn't have happened. As a sort of therapy they took us up in an identical plane and showed us all of the safety nets that plane had to keep from crashing like that. I also had a small Israeli jet come in hot as hell on final during a light rain. My maintained slowest speeds due to rain didn't seem to mean anything and they went sliding off the end of the runway. What made it worse was instead of just waiting to be pulled out, he decided to use his jets to turn and try and get out himself, ripping his fuel lines out and grounding the plane. Luckily nothing catastrophic happened, but I did get the nickname Dragon Slayer as their CS was Dragon 11. I used to work at this cabinetry place that had this big industrial saw known as a beam saw. What you do is lay material, in this case sheets of particle board or MDF, onto some rollers and the machine clamps the end and draws the piece inside the machine. A guard comes down sort of like a metal curtain and a large blade makes cuts that have been entered into a program at the measurements required. Well, the operator puts a piece down. Hits start. Machine pulls the in. He notices at the last moment that the piece isn't square and tries to push it in quickly. The metal guard comes down, which has considerable force, and traps his hand. The program starts and in a panic trying to free his hand doesn't hit the emergency stop button and the blade runs past through the middle of his knuckles, completely cutting off 4 fingers. I used to work as a furniture manufacturer. Around rip/dim saws, band saws, planers, spindle molders, etc. Sometimes I'd have to onboard someone. Just a quick walk around. Explain the job, what we do, etc. Then onward for more training. I'd always start my onboard outside. Usually with a brew and a cigarette. Exactly the same words every time. First up. Everything in here is designed to kill you. If it doesn't kill you, it will maim you. And it's gonna hurt the whole time. If it looks like it can be moving, will be moving, has been moving, or has the potential to be moving, don't flipping touch it. Followed by a practical demonstration using a spindle molder as to just how quickly these machines can flip you up. I used to take a 2-square piece of timber and just press it against the cutting face. And watch as it quickly mulches it into dust and frag. In 20 years, there's been exactly 2 serious injuries that didn't involve me or my dad. We're proud of that. Colleague was absent from work for a couple days and wasn't answering their phone, so manager and I went to their home. The building manager gave us a key to their apartment, totally illegal of them. I know. And we opened it to find the colleague dead. Already at the door. I could smell something sickly sweet and I knew in my heart they were dead. We had to wait for the ambulance service to come declare them dead. Turns out they were sick for days and didn't contact a doctor or anyone else. Just slowly wasted away at home. I will never forget that first look into the apartment. Building manager here. There's nothing worse than the terrible smell calls. 90% of the time someone is dead and I have to post a 24-hour notice to inspect to find them. Had a guy have a massive heart attack between two furnaces in remelt department. It cooked him. His skin split like a hot dog on the grill. It was terrible. Also had a guy that had an air pocket in a molten pot. When the air pocket reached the surface it blew out and rained molten metal him. We had to chase him down to get him in the safety shower. Same place had a guy commit suicide in the parking lot because his wife was cheating with someone on her shift. Worked in a steel mill many years ago. One day a guy was doing something they've been doing for many years. And the molten steel came into contact with water from improperly dried refractory stones. Instant metal explosion that rained down a speedload of molten metal on him. He died in less than a day. Skin melting off his body and all the gory details. Luckily for me, it was my day off. Else I would have been a first responder. Some accidents are really hard for first responders. My mom told me the story of a lethal accident that happened 10 years ago at the factory she works at. A young inexperienced guy was driving a lifting truck. Crashed it and somehow flipped it over. It isn't clear how, but he was projected out of it and the forks ended cutting the top of his skull. Tin can style. The first guy to arrive on the scene was his best friend. He was so shocked that for the 5 minutes it took the EMT to arrive he was trying to administer a cardiac massage. When the rescuers told him to stop he began trying to put back the poor guy's brain in his cranium. It traumatized the whole factory. But the first responder in particular was more than 6 weeks on paid leave. And was never the same. He ended up leaving his job and switching careers soon after. Had someone jump off the roof on a very windy day. He was actually blown around the corner of the building to another roof where he promptly broke both of his legs. Now no one's allowed on the roof anymore, was used for smoking and cool downs, and you can still see the dent in the roof from where he hit. I work at a high school and a student pulled a gun on one of the teachers in the parking lot after school and made her give him the underwear she had on. He was caught later that day and said he did that because she is hot and wanted to use them to masturbate with. I work EMS. We went to the beating death of child. We had to attempt resuscitation for 20 minutes as on arrival he had several reversible causes of cardiac arrest, so we reverse those as best we can. Continue with resuscitation. Goes asystolic, flatlined, and we have to declare dead on scene. Worst part? It was his dad who beat him to death. I know all those who attended, myself included, have suffered as a consequence of this incident. Many of us have developed very poor mental health because of this incident. Those types of jobs are rare, and when you get one, they never leave you. I'm a jazz/classical pianist. One time, while playing at a pretty high-end cocktail bar, I notice an older man collapse at his table out of the corner in my eye. He was sitting alone. And either very few people noticed, or no one cared. Either way, nobody made a scene. I ended up speaking into the mic. "Do we have a doctor on the floor?" One woman came up thinking something was wrong with me. And I pointed her to the other section where the man was sitting. At this point staff was gathering around. Later found out he had a heart attack. And was okay. Crazy to me that he was in a crowded venue and no other patrons cared enough/paid enough attention to get him some help. Undefined. I'm a nanny. The first child I was ever a nanny for was molested on a family vacation by her aunt and uncle. It was heartbreaking. They let me know pretty much as soon as they got back. I informed them that I definitely wasn't qualified to deal with it. I was only 18 and really had no idea how to deal with it. I stayed though. They told me I was one of 3 people in her life that she completely trusted, and both they and her really needed me. My brother and I owned a restaurant together for 7 years. One night a lady came up to pay her bill. My brother was helping her while I was standing next to him making small talk as we did with all our regulars. Out of the blue she says she is so sorry, and then before she could cover her mouth fully, projectile vomited through her fingers into my brother's mouth and on his face. I let out a Jesus peeping Christ and ran to the hills while my brother was screaming a bunch of oh no, oh no. No 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 no's. He ran into the kitchen and started pouring soap into his mouth. He still gags if I bring up that story. I love how she had time to apologize but didn't have time to turn her head down to the floor.